Let's bring in our halftime headliner. I said Fundstrat's Tom Lee was going to be with us. He is here now. He, of course, is managing partner, head of research there. So what was your take from Powell, Tom, and what does it mean for your outlook for stocks?
Well, Powell gave tough on inflation talk. It's been consistent with the Fed's stance for all of 2022. So I don't think it should be a surprise to investors. But I think one of the takeaways for me is the Fed is going to really respond when inflation is on a trajectory to be under control. And that pace is unknown. It's something the Fed doesn't even want to attempt to forecast. And of course, because the markets are nervous and don't have visibility, they assume it's going to be around for a long time. I think this is where people who are constructive on markets should really focus on. The drivers for rising inflation or accelerating inflation have essentially evaporated. Housing inventory levels are now at the highest, almost approaching to where they were during the great financial crisis. Durable goods like cars and furniture, which became Veblen goods for a while, as the prices rose, demand rose, they're now turning into no demand even as prices fall. So I think you have outright deflation in durables. And then even on the subject of wages, we look at some of these high frequency measures like job openings from Indeed.com labs, they're down more than 40%. Wage growth doesn't have to get down to zero to meet the Fed's inflation target. They're being pretty explicit. It needs to fall about 1.5 percentage points in terms of wage growth. So if it's running around 3 to 4% is consistent with actual overall inflation of 2. So unless someone thinks inflationary drivers are accelerating, I don't think the Fed is sitting here wanting to crush asset markets. But they do want to remind people they're not going to be easy. And again, I think the stock market takes its cue from the bond market. The 10 years really kind of been pretty stable. I think this sell-off is going to end up being bought.
Yeah, unless you think, and there is, at least in small corners at the moment, a belief that inflation is going to be more ingrained into the system than some people think, for a variety of reasons. It's the story that Nick Timros of the Journal wrote the other day. Geopolitics, protectionism, only increasing global demand for commodities, wages, and because of the job market that don't really go down all that much, the demand for housing, et cetera, around the globe. Are you considering that at all, or you sound fully dismissive of that view?
I wouldn't say I'm dismissive. I think they're all credible points. But at the end of the day, the alchemy is, what is the shakeout in terms of consumer expectations for inflation? And the UMich surveys already show now for the third consecutive month, well, really, it'll be the third final, inflation expectations are falling, both on the 1 year and 5 year. So despite everyone's claim that inflation is even getting stronger, from a consumer's perspective, it's weakening. And look at the market-based measures of inflation. So if you look at the swaps market, the 1 year forward's at 2.7. It's pretty much been pinned there since mid-June. I don't think that the inflationary sort of outcome of all of these factors is actually accelerating inflation. I think it's cooling. I can't say I know where inflation is going to be in 12 months, but I would say that it seems like it's being on the downside versus consensus.
So Farmer Jim, who's sitting next to me, Jim Lebenthal, said 50 in September, 25 after that, and 25 after that. What are your own expectations? Because I need to know that in order to discuss your year-end target, which is lofty for the S&P.
I think between now and year end, I think the Fed is going to do somewhere between 100 and 125 basis points of tightening. That's kind of on track with their explicit targets. So it could be 75 in September and then 25 in the 2 meetings after that. There's, I think, a misconception that just because the Fed is raising rates, markets have to fall. It really depends on how much is priced into market expectations already. And again, I think that's something we've been focusing on. If you look at the rates markets, it's already priced in the Fed being pretty aggressive into year end and actually even staying pretty tight throughout 2023.